the Stark Museum of Art. I'm Miss Karen, and we're going to be making some caricature model magic heads today. Let's start by looking at Andy Anderson's The Jury, which you can see right behind me. These are beautiful examples of caricature works by him. Andy Anderson's The Jury is a much-loved work at the Stark Museum of Art, and an example of how the artist used caricature to create humorous and whimsical Western scenes. Personality is rife within the courtroom, and all of the participants, judge, jury, and defense, appear interested in everything but the case that is being tried. Anderson's use of bold, heavy knife strokes and rough-hewn lines, combined with the exaggerated faces and awkward stances of the figures, creates this amusing comedy of errors. We are going to be working in Model Magic, which is a modeling compound, but we are going to be drawing a lot of inspiration from these characters. So I hope you've been able to take a close look and join me in the studio shortly for an example of how we'd like to get started. Welcome to the studio. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a Model Magic caricature head from start to finish. We'll be using these supplies once it's all done. You'll need 3 packets of Model Magic, 1 wooden skewer, 1 styrofoam egg, and 1 cup of shallow water. Once it's all finished, you'll also need a Ziploc baggie with your name on it. Let's get started. We're going to start by covering up your styrofoam egg with some Model Magic. If it's already been flaking off a little bit, you can just rub it. And you'll need to begin working with your Model Magic and getting it warm and soft and pliable, easy to work with. Once it's got that point, you'll be turning it into a pancake, flattening it out, using the table or in between your fingers until you get a really nice flat shape to work with. And you just cover it right over this guy. Now all of the seams will join up perfectly. That's all right. We'll be able to rip off anywhere that joins up and then use this to fill in those gaps. The wonderful thing about Model Magic is that it's so pliable and so easy to work with. So you'll be able to keep messing around with it, keep pressing it in, until it is fully covering your surface. Then you're going to have a pretty lumpy looking potato. What I like to do at this point is smooth it out. Or just pat it in place. You're going to find some places that are thicker than others and you can push them in. But the wonderful thing about caricatures is that they are not perfect looking people, so we don't need to start out with a perfect looking egg. However, if you do know that one area is going to be your face and there's a big seam running through it, you do want to try to flatten that out as much as you can. And with those seams, you can also erase them a little bit just by dipping your finger into water, rubbing it over the area where it's that seam. Let it sit for about 2 to 3 seconds. That will help the water soak in, and then we're going to rub it. That seam should start disappearing right before your eyes. As you keep going around your egg, getting it into the shape you want, we will be keeping in mind that the pointy part of the egg is actually the chin of your person. The round part is the top of the head. So if you want to start sculpting where the chin goes, making it pointier or not, that is up to you. You may also find that there's some air pockets that form as you press and roll it around. If there's a large air pocket, you will need that skewer that you had before. Poke it right in that air pocket, wiggle it around, and then you'll be able to press the air out. Once it's all pressed out, just add a bit of water, wait a few seconds, and press it in. All right, now we're going to turn your egg shape into the face. We're going to start by looking at the planes of the face. You can see right here, we actually have a model of that on your student guide. You'll be able to follow along with that. Don't be afraid to exaggerate features. You could have a large chin, a large forehead, very deep sunken cheeks. All of those are up to you. That's your artist's decision. For making caricatures, exaggerated features are wonderful. They add some extra character. I'm going to show you how to get started. You'll be taking a small amount of model magic. You'll probably be opening packet number 2 by this point, and essentially making small pancakes like this. I like to make a thick area right in the middle of my pancake. So if I was doing the cheeks, for example, let me do the cheeks right now, then that middle pad right there is the cheeks. You'll try to keep in mind basic proportions. The eyes will be somewhere close to middle. So my cheeks would be a little bit below that. Even though the cheeks are going over a little bit of where my mouth might end up, since I'm flattening it out, it should all even out in the end. The important thing to remember about features is that the more shaping you do off of the head, the easier it's going to be to make it look right on the head. I've been working on this model. He has a pointed chin here. One of his cheeks is ready to go. His forehead is built up. You can see that very well through the angle here. And we're working on the back of the skull. And of course, you've noticed that we have all of these seams right here. And now that we're up to the point where his face is going to start being visible, we probably want to cover some of those up. Some of them may not be necessary. If you're doing hair on your person, then all of these seams can really be left alone. But looking at the cheeks, the chin, and the top of the forehead, getting those smoothed out is probably going to help me out in the long run. So at this point, before I start on any of the features, and I know you're tempted to do that at this point because it's so easy to think about the eyes and what cool features you're going to be putting on them. Let's smooth this out. Just a dip of water. Run around these seams here, let them rest for a little bit. And go back in. And it can be hard when you're holding this guy with one hand. Make sure you're not squeezing into the skull, squeezing into these other features you're already doing. Try to let it rest in this hand while you are pressing in with this one. If any of the features start warping a little bit, once you're done with those seams, pressing them in, getting them smoothed out, you can still shape them a bit. Here's how my head is turning out so far. You can really start seeing the shape of the face come together. We can see I'm probably going to be putting in eyes there, some sort of mouth there, nose right in the middle, ears. So we can see that face is coming together just because we've added a few of those planes we were talking about. Getting this shape of the head is very important, as well as a few basic areas in front. This is about as smooth as it's going to get. I could probably work a little harder on this seam here, but you'll always see a few rough cut type lines. Just get them where you are happy with them. You'll be adding more and more features. All of those things we just talked about, eyes, eyebrows, lips, all of that is going to help cover up some of those seams as well. Let's get started with the eyes, because it's really important to have them centered where you want them and be able to see where they're going to end up. The eyeball itself is going to be the deepest part of the eye. So we're not going to actually build that on. We're going to build around the eye, under it, over it, and build up that area that you see here that's coming out, and leave the eyeball, for the most part, alone. One thing that will help you though is if you take your skewers, we can actually poke in those areas where you will see the iris or the pupil. So let's take a look. So he looks a little silly right now, but I can also draw in by dipping the skewer right in the water and kind of draw for myself a little bit. This probably won't show up in the end, but I'll draw for myself a little bit how big the eye is going to be right there. And at this point, if you want to give your Model Magic head some emotions, you can have wide, big eyes for surprise, small, squinty eyes for suspicion or paranoia. You can give them all kinds of wonderful, silly emotions, or anger, because you'll be adding in the eyebrows, and eyebrows tend to be very expressive when it comes to that. So now that I've got that, I'm not, again, like I said, I'm not building up these eyeballs at all. I'm just going to be building up these areas. So let's take a look. Again, working with kind of pancake-like shapes. Try to make them very flat near here and thicker where you want those eyebrows to go. And they're going to look very, very silly to start out with, but as you continue refining and shaping it, it'll look a little closer to your vision. All right, so I have my eyes spaced out. At this point, I'm going to start smoothing out some edges. The edges that I'm not going to really worry too much about smoothing are right in the eyeball, because the eyelid actually has a crease already there. So I'm just going to emphasize it with the skewers. And then try to smooth out these spots and these spots. I'm going to be able to use the skewers here to mess with them a little bit until they're a little bit smoother, or even add a tiny bit more model magic in areas that I think will need a little bit more, and then smooth them out from there. Once you get this smoothed out, you may even want to go back and spread that eyelid back down there. All right, at this point you should be somewhere into your second packet. We're going to try to leave the third packet to be for hair. If your guy ends up being bald, then that's perfectly fine. Add another layer of character to him. Let's keep moving and work on the nose. Noses can be a little tricky, but I have a way to do them. We're going to start with our blob in our hands and make a basic triangle shape. You just want it to be real nice and skinny and small at the top. And how fast he ends up having a big nose at the end means how stubby that nose is going to be. It could be long, it could be short, but you're starting out with that basic triangle shape and just pinching it off right at the very top. Remember, we're trying to sculpt as much as possible on our hands first. Get it on there. And this is a fabulous tool if you wanted to get in those nostrils. You've got this round edge right here. And ta-da, they're done. So with this nose, you may be wanting to smooth out here and here. But down here is not terribly necessary. Some people also like to add the curve you sometimes see around the nose here. Again, using a wetted down piece. So I think I'm going to smooth it just here and here and not worry about too much else. Up here there may be some eyebrows forming. The nose really adds a lot of character and depth to this face, especially since we already have those cheeks in place. It's really great to see our person come together. So with those lips, just have a tube, and I have that happy smile. And lips can be real complicated when it comes to trying to integrate them with the face. We're going to leave the middle of the lips alone because, again, they're a seam that opens up to the rest of the mouth. That can be left alone. But trying to integrate it into the rest and then also pinch it in a lot where the cheeks come together. We're going to try to pinch it in and make sure that shape is looking good before we move on to fixing the other shapes. Once you've got the overall shape for the lips, all you're doing then is smoothing the outside areas there and there. And since it's so close to the nose here, I'm probably going to be using my skewer to try and reach in there. But since no one can really see that top lip very clearly, I'm not going to stress out too much if I can't get right in there. But I am going to try to at least get these edges. Next up are some ears. Just take a bit here, and all you really need for some good looking ears is a half circle shape. You want them nice and big, or itsy bitsy, or sticking out. That's up to you. So I'm just going to take this half circle shape and try to figure out. They're going to be halfway back on the head, maybe a little bit further up if you want them to be sticking out. We'll be laying down some hair. If you have sideburns or longer hair, we'll be covering that up right that way. But we're going to try to get that ear. And it's not sticking straight out usually. It's coming back a little bit and then coming out. or staying flat up against the head, however you like. And then don't forget the ear usually has a bit of a circle right inside of it. I can create it with my nails, or you can just create it right here. Draw any extra lines like that. And I'll smooth it out a tiny bit, but I think I'm going to put some hair down there, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. And at this point, your face is mostly done. If you've got other features that you want to add onto the face, do it now, because the next step up is hair, and at that point it's going to be hard to handle parts of your head without smooshing other parts. So let's see if we can finish up the front of your head. We're going to start focusing on our hair. So if you haven't already opened your third packet, now's the time that you want to do that. Facial hair would come first, so any mustaches, any beards, and sideburns. I've actually already added my eyebrows on as well, but if you haven't added eyebrows or thought about them, now's a great time to do that too. I'm going to add in sideburns and give this guy some hair. Sideburns are pretty straightforward. You're going to be looking at a flat triangular shape and laying them just in front of the ears. Since I'm going to be laying some extra hair on top, I'm not worrying about that seam there. I'm just going down, 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 like that. The wonderful thing about Andy Anderson's caricatures is they're very rough cut. So don't feel like you have to be working in every detail all the time. You can always work in rough patches and then come back in and add lines. If you're doing more complicated hair, let's say curls, then it's a lot easier with curls if you have a nice long tube like this. Again, we're shaping it off of the head first, giving yourself the curls that you want, and then adding them onto your creature. I recommend starting out with bangs first, and then coming around to the back of the head with what you have left. Since the back of the head is where he rests, let's make sure he's going to be able to be propped up by his hair as well. That hair is going to be what gives him a little extra oomph. If you end up having extra, you can also just make a wedge right there for him to sit on. All right, I've been working hard on my head, and here's how it's come out. Again, I'm not too worried about how it looks right here, because that's where my head rests. I'm focused mainly on the front and side areas, and I think he is a pretty heavy guy. We're going to put him away in a moment. Just before I put him in, I'll do one last look, make sure nothing got too bent out of place, that the lines are as deep as I want them to be, and then I can put them away in this plastic baggie. This should already have a name on it so that you can find your guy later on without any issues, and you'll be putting him wherever the teacher says that there's a clear space to set up. I want you, when you put him away though, to leave this plastic bag open. And what that's going to do is allow the Model Magic to dry, but with just a little bit of air at a time. Model Magic, when it dries, it tends to shrink. So this is going to slow the rate of shrinking and make sure that cracking doesn't appear on your piece. Just leave it open like this, let air flow in, but at a nice, slow, steady pace. At the end of day number 4, you should be able to take him out and let him dry completely for any last bit that didn't really fully dry out yet, and you will be all yours and ready to go. Thank you for creating Model Magic caricatures with us. It's a little bit of a fun ride. Don't get too married to any ideas that you may have in the earlier part of the process, as your sculpting may surprise you. Enjoy creating!